How's it going, folks? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most underrated gimbals on the market, the DJI RS3. So as a filmmaker, getting smooth cinematic shots is absolutely crucial. And with a variety of different types of 3-axis gimbals out there on the market, it could be difficult to choose which one is best for your use case. And my light just died, so that's great. Oh boy. Look at this thing, it's like a lightsaber. So over the years, I've tried out a whole bunch of different stabilizers from Steadicams, Zhiyun cranes, including every single generation of the Ronin series from DJI, and this is the latest version of their lineup, the RS line. So there is the RS3 Mini, RS3, and then the RS3 Pro. The Pro model obviously being the top of the line flagship model, so it's gonna be packed with additional features, which is mainly, targeted for professional users who want to really build out their setup and add as many attachments, monitors, focus motors, etc, etc. The RS3 Mini being the most portable and smallest form factor version, more beginner friendly if you will, and also for a smaller payload. So if you have a smaller camera, something like a mirrorless camera, that's something that you would want to opt for. It's not going to have any of the pro features or accessory compatibility that the other models will have. And the RS3, which is this one over here, is their intermediate, I like to say, model that has both features of the Mini as well as the Pros. The standard RS3 is targeted for solo filmmakers, creators, content creators, anyone who really wants to just take advantage of both of the portability aspect of the Mini and some of the pro features in the higher end model. So you're gonna have a pretty intermediate sort of payload at 6.6 pounds, which I think is more than enough for a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, even attached with a big lens. So the current camera setup I'm using right now, which I'm actually recording this video on, is the Canon R5 along with the Sigma 1835mm f1.8 lens. It's also a crop sensor lens, by the way, so that's why I never really zoom out all the way, otherwise you're gonna have a lot of vignetting. And on top of that, it's also attached to an adapter because the Sigma lens is an EF mount and the R5 uses an RF mount. And I opted for the adapter that has the drop-in ND filter and is also variable, so I can actually just scroll a little wheel to adjust my sort of exposure. It's a heavy camera and it comes in close to around 4 to 5 pounds, so right below the limit. And using that camera setup with the RS3 has been quite amazing. I haven't had any major complaints. A majority of the things that I shoot with the gimbal is weddings, automotive content, and sometimes some like short form content. So yeah, let's talk about this thing, what I like, what I dislike, and if it is the right gimbal for you. Overall, the build quality is absolutely insane. That's what you expect from DJI. Very sturdy, doesn't feel flimsy, although a lot of the construction is plastic. It doesn't feel like it's a mushy or like a flexible plastic. It's very, very stiff. And the RS3's capabilities when it comes to how smooth the gimbal actually performs and how well it's able to handle the heavy weight of my camera setup, it's quite amazing. I haven't had any issues with shaking or stability issues. It's fairly easy to balance. I like to balance it before I actually turn it on. That way I can have a more accurate sort of configuration. It does have nice little locking points, which I'll get into in a little bit. But as you can see, very simple setup. I don't have my camera on here, so I can't show you guys exactly what it would look like. And what's really cool for this version, I think the RS2 might have it as well, is that it comes with this little minor fine-tune adjustment knob as well to sort of push the camera forward or back. And once I get that balance with the gimbal off, I just turn it on and it's good to go. And even if it's not exactly balanced, let's say it's a little bit off where the camera's not super straight, you can run the auto calibration and the motors will adjust accordingly to that. And you're not gonna really notice that it's actually off balance slightly. Talking about the locking feature, what's really cool about this model, I believe the RS3 and the RS3 Pro have it. I don't think the Mini has it. So when you shut the gimbal off, or even if you put it on standby mode, it'll actually lock all the axes and it'll auto fold as well. That way you're not gonna cause any damage when transporting with the gimbal. So for example, right now it's in its locking mode, it would automatically do this. And as you can see, it's not going anywhere. So when you pack in your bag, throw it in your car and whatnot, it's not gonna start flopping around, and you can even leave your camera on here. That way you're not gonna have to lose your balance or any adjustments that you made. Also allows it to be very compact. So like I said, this is not the Mini version, so it's not gonna be as portable, but even if I were to break this down, it does become quite small. So the tripod unit comes off like so, and also the battery can detach. And if you are running multiple batteries, you can always just hot swap it. So if you have a long shoot where you don't have time to charge your gimbal, you can just pop it right off, put it on. The battery itself also acts as the handle. So sometimes I like to use it without the tripod unit, just the handle alone. And that leads me to my next point. The battery life on the RS3 is absolutely insane. Whenever I do wedding shoots, the gimbal is running basically the entire time from the beginning of the event to the end of the event. And I never had to charge it once. This is actually after I shot a whole wedding and I let the gimbal sit here for about 2 weeks. And as you can see, it still has 3 bars, which is pretty nuts. Mind you, I'm not actually running the gimbal, using it physically for like 8-9 hours. Occasionally I'll leave it on standby mode where it's still on, but I never fully shut it off. And the reason why I like to leave it in standby mode is just so I can pick it up and go right away instead of, fully turning it on, fully turning it off. And the way to access that sort of standby mode is if you press the power button once, it'll lock all the motors, but it'll still keep that same configuration where your camera is located. Whereas if you fully shut it off, it'll actually fold and then lock. So that's the difference. So I just basically left it in that midway point where it's locked, but it's not fully closed and shut down. Now, the way I like to shoot is I like to make things as simple as possible. So I don't really like having a whole bunch of accessories or attachments. I just like the gimbal raw itself. I don't go through all the different menus and settings. If that's something that you're looking for, just something simple, something that can just get the job done without being too complicated, the RS3 is absolutely perfect for that. I will say the R5 with the lens I have on here is quite a tight fit. There's barely about 1 millimeter of space before it actually hits into the arm itself. So that is something to keep in mind. So if you do have any other attachments, like if you want to put like a shotgun mic or a wireless microphone attached to the setup, you might have to make a couple of manipulations to the setup. Because for example, on the wedding shoots, I would hook up wireless microphones, and there's no place for me to put the wireless receiver on top of the camera, otherwise it would hit into the arm. So with that, I would actually just tape it underneath somewhere or on the handle and just strap it on. There's like just enough clearance for DSLRs and mirrorless cameras and big lenses. If you're opting for something like the Mini, it's going to be a bigger issue. The Pro model obviously will have a lot more, clearance and space, so it's easier and it's meant to do that. Now, like every product, there's always a pro and a con. I already kind of briefly talked about the con in terms of the clearance issues, but there is another flaw that does kind of tick me off a little bit about the RS3 and the Pro model as well. You can't really use a vertical mode on this, and I know vertical content is becoming a lot more popular nowadays, especially with TikTok and Instagram Reels taking over, even YouTube Shorts. A lot of the previous models actually came with a built-in vertical feature. You just press a button and it'll turn the camera vertically, or some of the models that didn't have it, you can just put it into like a rolling axis and just manually set it to a vertical config. The RS3 Mini, on the other hand, does have a native built-in vertical config, but I don't know why the RS3 and the Pro model doesn't have it. Although, it's not the end of the world because DJI does sell you a solution. Very Apple of them, I gotta say. Create a problem just to sell a solution. They make this little adapter piece. It's basically an L bracket that goes onto the existing bracket, and that will enable you to use a vertical mount. But I will say I'm not too big of a fan of that, just because you will have to constantly change out the bracket if you want to shoot vertically, if you want to shoot horizontally. Having that feature not implemented into this via programming does kind of suck. And I don't think there's a physical limitation with the gimbal to be able to do that. I think it's a software limitation. And so if you are someone that's like a run and go shooter and you want to switch from vertical to horizontal, horizontal to vertical, it does make it a little bit tricky where, it's going to take some time to switch the bracket out. On top of that, you might even throw off the balance, ultimately killing that sort of portability aspect that this gimbal was intended for. But overall, I gotta say the RS3 has been a great performer. What really surprised me was just how smooth it is, the ease of calibrating it, balancing it, and it comes with a whole bunch of modes where you can even use like your phone or Bluetooth, and you can even use like the record button on here to like Bluetooth connect to the camera. If you guys are interested to see more examples or shots that I got with the RS3, you can watch my full wedding film that I just shot last week. It'll be in the description below or on my second channel. And just for comparison's sake, I'll leave another link in the description below for another project I shot using the RSC2. So a generation back, a slightly different model, the one that actually has a rolling axis to, use the vertical mode. Although I didn't really use it because I don't use it much for when it comes to actual client projects. And I will say for the RSC2, I did have to use warp stabilizer on top of the footage. Whereas for the RS3, a majority of the shots, I didn't even have to use that because it was just so smooth straight out of the gimbal. So with that being said, hopefully this video can kind of give you an idea of the RS3. and my review on it, I think it's an 8 out of 10. It has a couple quirks to it that I think could have been improved upon. Other than that, I'm pretty satisfied with the RS3, and later this week I will be shooting another wedding project, so really trying to make use of this gimbal, really trying to push it to its limits and see what it's capable of. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and a comment below if you have any questions. And if you are new to this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as turning on those post notifications to see when I upload. It's been your boy, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.